All right, guys, this video we're going to talk about Confession Study Guide 1, so grab your worksheet and then also maybe your book. I'm going to be referencing page numbers from this edition, so hope you can follow along. I am going to be omitting the questions that you had to write out a quote and kind of explain the context of it and why you found it interesting. I'm also going to omit the junior, senior, and the honors section for these purposes. I will be grading those though. All right, so from book 1, how does he begin the confessions? This is from page 3. He begins with praise. He also quotes scripture. Some of his questions of God, this is question 2, and there were a lot of choices you could have put down. On page 3, he said, how can I call out to you? Page 4, how do heaven and earth contain you, or do they contain you? He asks, what is God? Page 5, he says, who shall grant me rest in God? So there are a lot of possibilities there. Now, question 3, what motivated Augustine in his disobedience? This answer kind of starts on page 9, and he talks about how he was not being given into his demands even as a baby. So he was making demands as a baby, crying, desiring, demanding things, screaming as an infant. But then he starts talking on page 11 and 12 about his desire for play. And on page 12 he says it was through the sheer love of play that he was motivated to disobedience, and he really hated his schoolwork at that time. And then question 4, to finish out book 1, was he baptized as a youngster? And the answer is no, and we're told on page 12 because he recovered from an illness. All right, book 2. Why did his parents desire his education in preference to a wife for him? And they each had different reasons. On page 28, his mother thought a wife would be a hindrance to his studies. And if you remember, kind of down at the bottom of that page, she thought that if he studied, he would come to know the Lord through his studies. And then his father, a very different reason. Basically, his father had vain ambition for Augustine, what he calls vain ambition. All right, now, he stole as a youngster. This is from page 29. He stole pears. And he did it for the joy of stealing, for the joy of the sin, for the pleasure in doing what was forbidden. Interesting commentary there. All right, question 3. He thanks God for all that he has been given and for what else? So this I got from page 32, some possible answers. He thanks God for being forgiven such great sins and all of his evil deeds, but also sins that he would have committed but for the grace of God. So future sins that he thought he would have committed. So those 3 questions round out book 2. Now, book 3, to what does Augustine attribute his lust? And this is from page 37. And he says basically he was hungry. And he's hungry for want of spiritual food. So basically he's saying he was hungry for God. And if you think about it, you've heard that we were created to worship. So we're going to worship something. And so he's saying all of his idolatry was replacing the true worship of God. All right, question 2. What does Augustine say about Cicero's work? And again, there's a lot of potential answers. So I kind of traced this section from page 40 all the way to page 42. So these are things that I'm looking for. He says that, and this is in the bottom of page 40, kind of starts. He said that Cicero's work changed the direction of his mind. Going into page 41, he said it altered his prayers. It gave him a new purpose and ambition to really try to find and go to God. So then he starts talking about philosophy, and then he goes on to discuss wisdom. And he finally says, kind of a culmination here on this section on page 42, he thinks that Cicero's work is better than Scripture at this point. He was finding Scripture dry, and he talked about the majesty of Cicero's work. All right, now, question 3, what was Monica's dream? This elaborate dream was laid out on pages 49 to 50, and basically the bottom line of the dream is she dreamed about Augustine's salvation and how that came to be, or how it was going to come to be. And then the last question here for our purposes is question 4. What final words did Bishop Ambrose have for Monica? And this was from page 51. And he says the final words. So he says a lot of stuff to her. The final words. He says, it's impossible that the son of these tears should perish. So basically he's telling his mother, Augustine's mother, that someone who, a mother who labors in prayer for a child as she did, who weeps for the salvation of a child as she did, will not perish but be saved. All right, so some interesting stuff. Hope you're already enjoying getting into the next couple of books, and look for the next video covering the next study guide. All right, see ya.